Hi, how's it going? Andrew here. Today we're going to be talking about deck building, an introduction to deck building, not too advanced, but for people who are starting from zero. So, what is the goal of deck building? It's so easy to just copy and paste a list from online, but for most beginners and even advanced players who just don't have the money or time to just, get packs and get everything that you need, you don't have all the cards. That's, optimal for the optimal deck, right? Like it's difficult to get every single piece. It's not easy. So this video is meant to help you think about how you can play around with what you have so far and how you can proceed moving forward in this game until you get all your pieces available. Okay, so where do you start? You start with getting a winning image, right? Like figuring out how you want to win. For example, with the Tsukiyomi video, it's like, oh yeah, I want to draw into my pieces and also stack my deck so I can hit my triggers when I need to stack my triggers. For MLB, it's I want to get into my MLB +2 crit and like apply crit pressure. So that's your winning image. So think about that as you start building your deck. And then other than that, where I generally start with a clan that I'm not familiar with is getting with the core and the staples, right? So what is a framework that could be applied for this? So let's make it happen. So at the top, the winning image, right? So this is how you're going to win. With OTT, for this example, your winning image, the way you're going to win, generally Silent Tom is a very easy win condition, win con. You attack, you force your opponent to not be able to use their sentinels, and then you hope they don't have a heal. Right. Okay. And then another one would be Imperial Daughter, right? Like, okay, I apply crit pressure. I have a strong defense. It's also a winning image. If you want to know more about that, you can go check out my other video specifically on that. And then moving backwards, then you get into your supports, right? Like, okay, what cards support your winning image, right? For example, you're playing Tsukiyomi, you have 6 or more soul. Maybe you want to play the Secretary Angel to help you filter through your deck. If you're playing soulless OCT, you're playing Scarlet Witch Coco. Maybe you want to play the opposite of that. The 9K on the right side that does the same thing, but when you have no cards in your soul. So when you pick and choose your cards, first you want to pick a card that helps you win, and then cards that help facilitate that win condition. And then lastly, it's your vanillas, right? It's your 8Ks, your 10Ks, your cards that don't do much. There isn't any particular effect or ability, but they do what they need to do, right? Like it's a good booster, especially in the current metagame, right? 18k columns hit through cross stride numbers, which is the meta. Dragonac Overlord at the end, Phantom Blaster Overlord and Majesty Lord Blaster, and especially the 8k is important because having that 9k booster, like the support cards generally are 9ks, hit 17, and they still beat the tier 1 deck in the metagame, right? Okay, so and then if you don't have all your cards, and you're just starting out with this new clan or this new deck, then maybe you can consider playing the Cray Elementals. But generally, you should play whatever card you have other than the Cray Elementals because they just have higher card quality. Like Cray Elementals are meant to be just like the bare bones. Like they're not like even comparable. Like for example, OTT has like a 7k, but it could counterblast 1 and get +1k, right? So that card's just better because it does one extra thing. Like even if you don't use the skill at all, it's just more flexible for the 1% chance that you need to use the skill. So let's avoid the Cray Elementals. And lastly, you have your winning image, you have your support, and whatever slots you have left, you fill in with your vanillas. Remember to put your PGs, because if you don't have them, it's really hard to play the game. Of course, if you just started and like, oh, should I craft a PG? Generally, I say if you really want to play that clan, then go for it. But if you're willing to put the time and effort, you will get the Sentinel medals through the rank rewards from the VP rewards. Sorry. So you can take your time with the other clans that you're not maining. But if it's the clan that you really want to play like 100%, then go ahead and craft them because it's really hard to play a proper game without 4 PGs. Like it's just the way the game works. So now that we know generally what's the framework, let's move into why this is important or relevant, right? Like the Vanguard Zero system, shifts the deck building aspect from 1 plus 49, one starter and 49 other cards. Of course there's triggers and non-triggers, but that's a different talk for another day, to 1 plus 13 times 3, so 1 plus 39. So just quantitatively speaking, right? Like, if you're going through 49 cards, it's going to be harder to go through 49 cards than going through 39 cards, right? So the chance of hitting each card is just higher. So that means that while you're restricted with how many cards of each grade you have, the overall chance of getting it is more balanced. So you could argue that you're going to get grade 6 less. Of course, you have to get some numbers to back that up. But you could also argue that there's more value and consistency in just the zero system. And again, we talked about the consistency with the lower number of cards, but another important aspect is like the definition of grades is just overall better defined, right? Like in the main game, you still have the same keywords: boost, intercept, and twin drive. But like all the other cards have drive checks. It's just one extra drive check. Like grade 3s didn't have a specific role outside of riding it. It was usually a dead card at the beginning of the game. Like you didn't have shield value. As a rearguard, most of them didn't have a very strong rearguard skills, so it didn't really matter. Like you just kept it in your hand to discard them for PGs. With grade 2s, that 5k intercept in the front row, it does help, but it's not very significant. And the grade 1 boost mechanic is important, but the grade 0s also had boost, so it wasn't really clearly defined, and it made there was room for more creativity in the card design. But in this game instead, each of the grades have a specific role. Grade 1's boost to hit numbers. Grade 2 acts as taunts, so you have to hit through them, so there's more value in them. And grade 3s have triggers applied to them. In addition, there's just triggers on top of the grade 3s, so then there's more use to it because there's no shield value and other aspects to it. So yeah, like definitely think about how these more clearly defined definitions affect deck building in Zero compared to the main game, and think about like for example, in the main game you could play like 15 grade 1s and like 12 grade 2s or whatever, and how does the 13 count affect the consistency of the game? Does that mean you have to play more draws, which the answer is yes, you play more draw triggers, or like other aspects of the game. And if you understand the base of it, then you get to understand more about how to play better yourself as well. And then lastly, better define rarities, right? Like in the Zero system, they looked over the cards from the original paper format, and they adjusted the rarities. For example, Palamedes used to be a triple rare, and Dual Axe Dragon used to be a double rare. And there were grade 3s that did 10 plus 3, right? Like 10k plus 3k given a certain condition. You can argue that certain conditions are easier to achieve than others, but I'd argue it doesn't warrant an extra level of rarity, right? Double rare to triple rare is quite significant in terms of value. So with the better defined rarity, I think it's easier for beginners to understand how power levels correlate to rarity. And so it's easier for you to think about. Does it mean always chase rarity? That's not the case. You still have to think about it. There are some cards that are a big question mark to me, like why is this a triple rare? But generally speaking, yes, I think you can follow the rarity in this game. So that's basically it. It's a really short video. I am going to be talking about rarity and how it affects the game in another video. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and tell me how you feel about deck building in this game. Alright, see you next time. Bye.